Okay. So welcome back tonight. My name's Kathi, for anyone who wasn't here before. And this week we're going to be looking at mainly to do with anger and aversion in our life and how we can deal with that constructively. Is this mic okay for everyone? Am I coming through? Okay, just yell out if I get a bit faint. Okay, so last week we were looking at attachment, and there was a suggestion that attachment could have a positive slant to it, and I agree. It's generally the connotation here in the West to have the thought that attachment, like the suggestion was like attachment for the family, so that's like something that we consider a kind of natural connection that we have with the family people that are close to us. So I looked up the definition in the dictionary, and definitely talks about having like fondness and loyalty and affection. So certainly that's the Western view. So what I was explaining is the Buddhist definition, which is particularly like very specific, and it's only about, like, attachment is about from the Buddhist point of view, seeking something for oneself out of the object. So enhancing one's own happiness, basically. And Buddhism is very specific in its terms and its definitions. And similarly, love, in the Buddhist sense, is the opposite of attachment, so it's about wanting the other to have happiness, and focusing on that, and not being a self-oriented need in the relationship. And so, and also, love in the dictionary in the West is, I was looking in the Oxford dictionary, it has love being the whole variety of like synonyms, but including attachment. So they lump it all in together. It's a whole lot broader. So I should have clarified that in the beginning. It's specifically about the Buddhist approach to attachment and love and anger and so on. These are very specific definitions. So moving on from love and attachment, we're going to go into more about other emotions that play out in our lives. But first, we'll do a meditation. And actually, in this meditation, we're going to use anger as a theme to meditate on. But first, we'll just get comfortable. And also, I just wanted to say, in regard to meditation as a daily practice, in a lot of emphasis is made on having a regular practice. So daily is considered the best regularity, but you can just easily work out a regular routine if you can't manage every day. But if you were interested in developing a consistent practice, then Geshe Doga, who's the resident Tibetan Lama here teaching, he often recommends us to start with like really short period of meditating. This is when what I'm talking about here is more developing a concentration practice, and not just like what we're going to do now, but that can go on. You know, an analytical meditation is something that you would just really use whatever time span you need to look into the subject that you're meditating on. But in terms of developing a single point of focus, and also just even at the beginning of any meditation to centre our mind, it's good to just start with like a minute or so, just really, really short. And the idea is to build up slowly. So in terms of developing concentration. So 1 minute sounds really so short, and funnily enough, Geshe Doga used to suggest 5 minutes, but it's gone down to 1 minute, so I don't know exactly why. But so I find it really helpful actually to do that. My my level of concentration is pretty low, and I can easily get distracted. So I find that if I set the mobile alarm clock for 1 minute, and then I build up, even in just one session, you can build up. Once you get used to 1 minute, you can build up to 2, 3, and so on. And what you find is if you do it that way, is that your mind trains in quality. So it's not about the quantity of time. If we're going to just get distracted throughout the 5 minutes that we do, if we're just going to be distracted and not focusing on the object. So that's the idea behind starting really short. So let's get comfortable and relax physically. So one of the main things is to keep our back straight, whether we're sitting on a chair or on the floor. That allows the subtle energies to flow more easily. And we can have our hands loosely folded on our lap. Can have the right one on top of the left one, just with the thumbs touching, if that's comfortable. That allows the energy flow between the hands. And just keeping your eyes gently, or rather slightly open, but kind of gently, sort of not completely closed is better. If we have them too wide open, it can be a little bit distracting. And if we just gaze down over the end of our nose, that's a good angle to be reflective. One way we can start to relax is bringing our attention into our fingers and our toes. That has a kind of way of unwinding the whole body. Just by doing that, bringing our attention into our hands and into our fingers and down into our feet and toes. Just checking that your shoulders are relaxed, not tense. Any muscles that are taut, just let them unwind. And feel perfectly comfortable as you sit there in whatever position you are. Just get perfectly comfortable. And then center our attention on the breath, just the natural breathing rhythm. Can be good to start any meditation by focusing on the breath briefly, maybe for 5 consecutive breaths. Now let's recall any time when we had felt upset with anger. There's so many avenues for that, perhaps with the family. They might press our buttons. Or road rage. Or at work. It could be in the form of impatience or feeling fed up or intolerant, resentful, fuming, frustration. Or those times when we're just at the end of our tether and even trivial things set us off. Can't find the keys or whatever. Feel so exasperated. And then we find the keys and we wonder where all that anger was coming from over nothing. Sometimes that's because it's coming from the well of hurt inside us, from some pain that we never addressed, but still sitting there. Building up. Every now and then it explodes. Whatever it is, we can forget about analysing the emotions involved and the story behind it. And now we're just going to focus on whatever painful feeling that memory has brought up. So we're focusing on that feeling of distress. So how we do that is we try and bring our awareness into the feeling wherever it is. So we could be feeling it in our gut or in our heart area. And if we lose the feeling, because it's just about a memory, then just revisit it. What triggered the feeling? This is a way of releasing past issues that are still sitting there. So it can be tricky to find or pinpoint what we're feeling. So we just keep tracking it down, trying to locate it mentally. And it can be slippery. So as soon as we get close to it, it disappears. So just keep trying to find it. This process is what's helping. This is the technique. So you let go of the story, all the details that trigger the pain, and you just focus on that feeling. And if it disappears, you try again to bring it to mind. And if it still hurts, so you bring the story to mind, and if it still hurts, you go into that feeling. If it's still bugging you, you go into it mentally. You try and bring your awareness and immerse it into the feeling to become one as much as you possibly can, because it's very elusive. And if it's to do with trauma, memories can be too invasive, so it can be so much in your face that you can't really focus on anything. But then just try to focus on that feeling of overwhelm that those memories evoke. Because in any moment we have a feeling within us. All right, we'll relax that object and we'll just bring our attention back to the breath. And follow the natural rhythm of the breathing gently. Allowing any thoughts to pass by without following them. Just give yourself a break from all the busyness. And gently follow the flow of the breath in and out. Okay, we can leave the meditation there. So just about that technique, it can be really tricky to get a handle on. Took me a couple of months of hard work before I actually was feeling the feeling. What we can tend to do is think we're feeling the feeling because we're so in our head a lot of the time. Well, anyway, talking personally. So I found that I had just been thinking about feeling it. So when we bring our awareness down into the feeling, that's like we're feeling because we become one with that feeling. And so for me, it didn't really start working until a couple of months of trying this method. So just letting you know that, because it might be your first time and you might be thinking, well, didn't do anything for me. And the other thing is it won't necessarily feel any different when you just get up from the meditation. It can sink in a bit later. It could be later that day, the next day, could be, you might forget about it, having done it, and then you think a few days later, I'm not even feeling bad about that issue anymore. So that's how it can come across too. But also, it does come in levels. The feelings that we have that get triggered. So we may have an issue, could be a long-term emotion that we have to deal with, and we find that if we use this method, we might think, that seems to have lifted it a lot, really feel over that now. But then later on, we might feel triggered by the same emotion, like something might happen and the same old feeling comes back, and we think, great. What it is tends to be that it's at a deeper level than the previous one, and it's still there because there's deeper levels to address. So that can happen too. But how did you find that? Have you got any comments about it yourself? Was it a bit tricky to get your head around what was actually you're supposed to be meditating on, or the breath, focusing on the breath? Any queries about that?
I really enjoyed meditation.
Yeah. That's good. Did you feel that it shifted something, or it just mellowed you out, or?
I guess I became present to the feeling of anger.
Okay.
And what it feels like to be angry.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting.
You came present to the feeling of anger. Yeah. Well, the thing about that is that it's like, you could say, surrendering to the feeling that we have. It's like accepting where we're at with it, and like there's different terms that mean the same thing, such as embracing the feeling, letting go of the feeling. It sounds like the opposite, but actually it's the same process. And what else? Releasing, did I say that? So even though embracing and releasing and letting go sound polar opposites, it has the same effect, because by accepting, it is released. And that's the beauty of it, this technique. It really dissolves into, basically, this is because it doesn't have any essence to it. So this, on a profound level, it's not appearing in the way that it actually exists. So that's why it can be radically shifted. It's not a solid thing that is going to just keep being there. Anyone else? Did you find it quite tricky to do? Or not really? You went okay? Good. I'm glad. I find that, as I said, because I'm so much in my head, it took me a while to be able to get the effect from that technique. And it was really fabulous when it did start to work, because I use it a lot. And you can also use it for physical pain. So, for instance, I bruise really easily. Probably says something about me emotionally as well. But with knocks and so on, I'll come up in a massive bruise. But if I release on the pain of that knock straight away is best, I find that I don't come up bruised at all. It's quite amazing. So it's really doing something on some level. And people have talked about even a burn can not, like, your skin doesn't show it if they release on the pain of the burn when it's happening. Yeah, amazing. So what are we up to? I also wanted to touch on a bit more. There was a question about grief last week, and that is a really hard one, really complex. So it's to really great one to release on, to try and find that emotion within us when it comes up. It's very complex, grief, because it often has a whole lot of emotions woven in there. So especially if it's over loss of a very close person to us, whether it's through them leaving or whether it's through them dying. And depending, how significant a relationship it is, it can be overwhelming for all of us. So it can take quite a bit to process that. So just wanted to mention that, because it can often be bundled in with trauma, perhaps depending on the what happened in losing that person or pet. So we might label it all as grief, but actually it could be a few different emotions. But the beauty of this technique is we don't need to label it. We don't need to know what it is. We just have to focus on the feeling. So that makes it really, it's a relief, because we don't have to think about anything that especially when we have a conflict with someone, we don't have to think about the argument or the whole, details and that. So it's, for me, I find that really refreshing, and just like being able to let go of all that stuff circling around in your head, and just to go into the feeling. And as I mentioned last week, or the week before, it seems to resolve the issue that you had with the person at the same time. So it even affects like the dynamic between you. So the other person, it seems that there's a definite shift in their energy as well. So that's always amazingly great. So the other thing about using techniques like this is that what we tend to do is, if we have an issue or something awful happens, say, or we've just had an argument or whatever, and we kind of like want to distract ourselves from it, just get on with something that's nicer. Like we might just get onto Facebook or put on the TV or have a drink, or we might want to call a friend, something like that. Well, that's all okay, we can do all that, but we actually have a great opportunity to nail that emotion in that moment. So we can do all that later. We can call a friend or whatever. We don't have to think that we can't do anything we just feel like doing. But it's really great to use that opportunity in the moment, especially when the emotion's strong and in your face. It's a really good time to go into it. And basically, it's about relying on ourselves, because we don't always have a friend around, or they're not available to talk, or, I used to find quite often when I needed a friend, I'd ring up one and they were busy, and I'd ring up another one, and I'd end up feeling worse because there was no one to connect with. So it's really great having that inner refuge, because it's always there. And also developing our inner strength and knowing that we can access that and that we don't require anything else but our own mind. Another aspect about this method is that it kind of feels counterintuitive to seek out that feeling. So our mind is averse to that. It's like really we don't want to know about it, so we kind of want to get as far away as possible. But if we do the opposite, we get the benefit. We take it on. And also when that emotion is released, it unleashes a whole lot of blocked energy too, so we benefit that way as well. So just giving you a few tips like that. Oh, and also we can have like a huge issue that we just think, we're shelving that. It's just too big to deal with. Forget it. Like nothing's going to be able to move it, But actually, that's a kind of deceptive mental attitude that our mind plays with us. So it's not true. So just try it with those really big ones as well. And like I said, it can take time. It can take time. We might need to focus on that feeling and revisit it for a long time, really like months or even years with the really deep ones. Depends how long we want to spend on it. When I say years, I'm talking about like that deep attachment that we have, those ever-present emotions that drive us. So over time we can shift it quite a bit, so that even though we still have a level of attachment or anger that impacts us, with our dear ones and those people that really disturb us, attachment, anger, it's palpable how much it shifts to be less in our face. So yeah, it's something that really is kind of incremental over time. There's actually, I remembered this example of similar thing. You might have heard of Joe Dispenza. So he was in a car accident, I think, and ended up in hospital as a paraplegic, I think it was, pretty sure that was his diagnosis. However, he was, I think he was a neuro something or other, so he knew about the brain. And so he worked on like going through his whole body and mending all the nerves and so on. And so after a few months, instead of having to be in a wheelchair for the rest of his life, he just walked out of hospital. So he lay there for a few months and fully recovered. And he's online teaching about self-medication like that. Yeah, healing, self-healing. And I find a lot of psychologists around the world and other self-awareness avenues are really tapping into this method. So it's really great to see it out there. It's so prevalent in a lot of reading that I do and different people that talk about techniques that they're into. It's really great. So there are some other methods too that say just in the moment, when just to save ourselves from exploding in the moment. There's one from a great Indian Buddhist master called Shantideva, who lived a long time ago. He's well known for quite a few really good quotes, actually, but this one is regarding to remain like a block of wood. So, a block of wood. So, if we, if someone cracks an insult or something and we just, instead of reacting, we just remain like a block of wood. Or we're in the family and someone does, something yet again that just so irritating or whatever. Instead of like exploding, we just kind of freeze. And that's a way of letting that moment pass and remaining composed. I've found that really helpful when I was married. And it was a good backstop. Kind of just helps us not lose it, really. It's a way of standing back mentally and, disengaging mentally, just to allow the moment to pass, and then the moment's gone. Like, okay, so that's all it was, just that really annoying moment, and saves us from getting involved and going with it and retaliating and all that it doesn't lead anywhere. And also there's another one where we can just also disengage, but just standing back, like mentally standing back, just sort of bringing our awareness back into our body and into our breath. And that can really help too. It's very relaxing to do that if we're just suddenly stressed, suddenly the stress is on. And there's also one that Geshe Doga often recommends too. When something's not big, something's just fairly small, kind of insignificant, that comes up in our mind, and we could get stressed about it. So he often suggests just don't buy into it, just don't pursue that. Don't give it the time of day. Just let it go. Don't think about it, basically. Just don't think about it. So it's those sort of things that we don't really need to bring on. We don't really need to engage with, but quite often we do, and then we kind of get head up about it. So yeah, we can just let it go in that way too. So we've been looking at these methods to deal with the immediate issue and the pain that arises in the moment of the conflict. But also, if we don't deal with it straight away like that, then the imprint on our mind that comes from that ordeal, that issue, if we react, for instance, instead of letting it go, or if we don't address it and just it's still sitting there, it's going to also have a long-term result, which makes it worse. So yeah, like also not addressing something when it first presents, we might think, oh, it's too big, I'll just leave it, I can't face it, can't take that on. But what happens, unfortunately, is that it keeps growing. It's like, it's not just stagnant, although emotions can become like that, but repressing it's sort of like, when we put off doing something and it weighs on our mind and becomes a whole lot of a burden. So it's also a bit like that. But if we don't release it straight away or address it, we also have the karmic long-term results of that action or that mind state, or if we've acted on it than the whole action. And karma is expandable, like it increases over time. So that's a real downer, because it also, the imprint that we have on our mind stream becomes a whole lot more of a nightmare, really. So there's a lot of examples that, for instance, even in this life, but we're also talking about future lives in Buddhism. So certainly down the track, meaning future lives, the results of anger are massive, and it plays out firstly in the type of rebirth that we will take, and also the conditions that we'll face in the following rebirths too. So I can go into a little bit of that. Don't want to freak you out, but so in Buddhism there's what we call 10 ethical or non-ethical or non-virtuous actions. They're kind of a category that of major ones. And we actually touched on these last week, I think it was. And the three physical actions, so there's 3 physical, 4 verbal, and then the 3 mental, which the physical and verbal ones come from, which we have been already talking about. The ignorance, the aversion, and the attachment. They are basically the 3 mental mind states, the mind states that lead to unethical actions. So the life that we've been born into, all of us, indicates that we have had previous ethical standard behaviour in our previous lives. So to have a human rebirth requires a great deal of virtue to have this sort of rebirth. And this is like as opposed to, say, animals. So they previously did stuff up the morality side of their behaviour. You see that some animals have really perfect conditions, like they have a lovely family life and they're really loved and looked after and they're very well cared for, So they were previously practicing generosity and maybe patience in their previous lives to get that sort of condition, but their immediate rebirth was as an animal, which is really unfortunate. Also to do with the lack of awareness or understanding about the way things exist and about how the law of cause and effect works. So I'll just go over a few examples. Oh, we're getting pretty close to 9 o'clock. Okay, so abstaining from killing, which is the major one. This is like, of course, because our life is the most precious thing. And so that's considered the greatest the worst action we can do is take another's life, whether it be animal included. And so what we find from us abstaining or refraining from killing is that we tend to have a long life and good health, and or if we do get sick, we find that we get easily cured, and like the medication that we have is really effective. We have access to all the right supports to be healthy, and also we have no like kind of threat to our life. So you just think of all the opposite to what would happen if we were killing or hunting. It's like we reap the benefit of refraining from that. So it's like we don't live in a war zone. So you look at some parts of the world, we're really fortunate here, incredibly fortunate in Australia compared to so many countries. And there was actually really tragic, just heard this tragic story the other day of last week when just after the Palestinian invasion. So there was a lady here, Israeli lady living in Melbourne, working with someone that I know, who went for a holiday to Israel on the day of the invasion. She landed there. So I mean, that's just so tragic, that timing. And you can see that how karma plays out, that she had the circumstances to arrive in Israel on that day. Yeah, so, and the other thing about having previously refrained from killing is that in the future, such as now, for us, we don't have the tendency to want to kill either. So we have that habitual framework from the imprints from previous lives. And even in this life, we can develop habits and so on exactly like that. So given the time, I'll just, I can finish that next week, and we'll just do a roundup on a little rounding up meditation just to finish off. Oh, actually, I should say, are there any questions? Yeah?
Regarding like medical conditions.
Yeah.
Let's say, like for myself, I've had quite I have a chronic pain condition.
A chronic pain condition, yeah.
For the last 10 years.
Right.
And I meditate daily. I've done it for about 4 or 5 years now.
Great.
But I have a lot of trouble as far as being able to function, and I don't. I mean, obviously, I don't know what happened in my past lives, but I've tried very hard to do the right things.
Yeah, yeah.
And, I do find myself quite frustrated with the situation that I'm in.
Yeah, for sure. It's really difficult. So what basically we all have things that different similar things that, depending to what degree that we go through as a result of previous actions. And compared to many, it's not, we don't have such bad ones compared to someone else, and then you've got something worse than some of us, and like that. But basically, there's different ways of looking at what's karma ripening like that, and sometimes we have the conditions to purify past negative karma through such as what you're going through, and having that attitude that you do of meditating and trying to deal with it is perfect, because you're not exacerbating that mind state that brought it on. So, we might have migraines. Some people have terrible migraines regularly and so on. And there's a lot of different hardships that people go through physically and mentally. And we can see it as a purification and as a positive thing. And it's great if, in some ways, it's easier to have physical complaints than the mental illness that is quite.
Combination, actually.
Yeah, well, that can be hard. Yeah, it can be really hard. Sounds like you've got a really good approach to dealing with it. Meditating, I hope, helps. Great, yeah. And I can go into a lot more about that. There's a lot to talk about in the following week. Yeah, because we've run out of time. But yeah, there's I can talk a lot about that, and there's also, we're going to do a purification practice next week to deal with what comes up, and also to basically cleanse past negative actions so that they don't ripen at all. Yeah. Sounds good. All right. So actually we could do a little purifying meditation now, but next week I'll go into what's called the four forces, because there's aspects of the purification. There's 4 different components to it that are really essential. But we'll just do a little visualization now. So just to finish off. So center the mind and just focus on the breath for a few moments. Let go of the thoughts. Now just imagine feeling the whole expanse of space around you, all the billions of atoms in the universes. And on each atom are as many fully awakened aspects, such as the Buddha, on each atom. So as many atoms there are in all the universes, on each atom there's an aspect of full awakening, whatever aspect you like it to take. It can just be filled with light. So on each atom is bursting with brilliant light, but what it represents is fully awakened wisdom, essence, transcendental wisdom. And this energy is emanating from all directions into the crown of our heads and pouring down filling our whole body with transcendental wisdom essence, which eliminates completely all negative imprints that are sitting within us, and they exit out of the pores of our skin in the form of black smoke. It can be even slime. Gushing out of our bodies. So we become completely pure, brilliant white light filling us from the crown right down to the toes. Vibrant energy, completely purified. And then this brilliant, dazzling light emanates out from our bodies in all directions, filling the whole sky in all 10 directions, above, below, everywhere. And imagining all other living beings in the universes being filled with this light emanating from us. And we can finish there. So thank you so much for coming. And we have cake, cheesecake, and another cake, and tea. If you'd like to join us in the dining room, please do. And hopefully see you next week. Thanks.